Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode. We will discuss about global climate change. We have our honorable speaker, Professor David Smith, and Mr. James Reed. I want to start from Professor David Smith. Professor, how you want to analyze today's topic? Especially we are discussing about global climate change. Already COP26 finished. There are a lot of commitment actually developed nations provide to the developing nations, especially uh, that we need to develop more projects based on climate resilience. So, how you want to analyze the outcome, especially from Malaysia or Singapore, we are observing people have very good interest that what's going on and what will be the future in terms of climate change and how we can develop better strategy.
Well, you're 100% correct that climate change is going to be one of the defining characteristics of our time period right now. You know, we had the shifting weather patterns that really impact food production, raising sea levels, just all different types of things. And we're trying different approaches to begin to deal with them. Uh, Climate change is really a complex area, though. It's a wide range of impacts and a wide range of challenges. And actually, climate change is a cyclical activity that's been going on for ages and ages. But the challenge today is part of that cyclical change has accelerated. And with that acceleration, that's what's creating some of the big changes we see today. According to NASA, though, if you look at what has happened, is carbon dioxide in the air has been going up. The global temperature, though, since the late 1800s, has gone up about 1.18 degree globally, and the Arctic ice has fallen about 13% per decade now. And actually last year, the ice sheets retreated by almost 400 billion metric tons last year. So that is a really big change. And even though it's small, the sea levels, though, over the last 100 years have increased about 3 millimeters per year, which is a troubling trend as we begin to see that going forward and what we're having to do with it. You know, there's some good news in it as well, though. You see the conference that was just concluded with the nations beginning to try to work with each other more. We've seen that the CO2 levels actually have, in many places, declined some, and the ozone hole over the poles have actually gotten smaller in the last decade. So there is a count that we can go back and say we're making progress. It's just we need to make more progress as we go forward. Uh, but the big challenge on climate change is that it's a global climate change. And global means you have to act globally. And what I can do in my city can help. What I can do in my state, what I can do in my country can help. But we need to go ahead and look at this type of changes globally and see how we can interrelate. We also need to look at ways to accelerate the way we can mitigate uh, some of climate change. I'm uh, thrilled when I see things like the high altitude floating solar barge that is delivering power. And it's not just the places it is, but actually at the higher altitude where this one just was deployed last week, uh, it's going to be more efficient. And that helps. Because what's interesting is the polluting at the higher altitudes is worse than the polluting at the lower altitudes because of its impact into the stratosphere there. We also see that coal generation is down, but yet we're seeing some countries having to increase their coal use because of the other challenges going on, particularly with the logistics challenges we have now because of COVID and the other impacts like that. Um, Climate change, though, has opportunities for advancement in science. There are now some scrubbers that do a pretty good job of beginning to do things on a small scale. We need to look at technology that can uh, interact on the larger scale and see how the science and entrepreneurship around those can be done. And it's one that we're seeing, like I said, good actions on it. Your question also included what can happen in the Pacific Rim, what can happen in Asia, Eurasia. And Eurasia is one of the regions where the pollutants for carbon, for climate change, is still accelerating. And it needs to be pulled back some more there. So your region is one that is active, uh, where
Your question
science,
also.
technology, entrepreneurship, government regulatory activities can really make a difference.
Thank you. Mr. James, how you want to analyze, especially if you want to share your views about COP26 and especially what will happen next few years.
Thank you, Sharif. Particularly important topic, and thank you, David, for doing the lead off so well as usual. You know, I think that the signs in Glasgow are one of nations coming together to cooperate, which is very, very important. It's necessary, but is it sufficient? Not yet. We need more cooperation between nations because, as David said, this is a global problem. I'd like to back up and say, you know, like we meet resistance when we try to take climate change seriously because it is nearing a catastrophic disaster. Yet people are willing to ignore it, not do anything about it. Why is this? So, well, one, you have the climate change deniers, those who say that it's not happening. There's not much you can do or say to these people. So don't waste time trying to persuade them because if you give them data, they'll just say, well, that data is false. If you cite experts, they will say, well, they're motivated by something else. And so there's no point in going down that road. Then there's the people that, as David suggested, that it's part of natural cycles, climate change, which is true. But it begs the question, has man had any impact on this? And the answer is yes, man has. Man has, since the dawn of the industrial age, had a significant impact. And with our capabilities that have been accelerating and having a direct impact on these climate change cycles, the impact of man has grown to the extent that we are altering and poisoning the environment we live in. And this is something that we have not faced in history before. No species has ever been able to affect the climate the way that mankind has. And so we are presented with a new challenge in the history of the Homo sapiens species. And this is also, we run against those who say, well, it's such a big problem, there's nothing we can do about it. So we have to overcome the apathy. We have to overcome the denial, the apathy. And we have to believe that there is something that we can do about it if we work together. And this is the thing, if we cooperate with one another. Now, the United States is probably, I will say, the worst polluter. And we are a country that has been trained to compete rather than cooperate. So this isn't playing to our strengths, but we're gradually trying to change. You know, but we have to have the political willpower to change as well. So this requires leadership. And when we have leaders saying, you know, let's bring back coal, then we're fighting an uphill battle. When we have leaders that say, yes, this is a serious problem and we're going to devote resources to it, then we have a chance. We have a fighting chance. And that's all we can ask for, a fighting chance. And we do have one. We still have one. But we needed to get working on this yesterday. And if we start working on it tomorrow, it's going to be too late. So what can you do today? And I always say, start with yourself. What can you do for yourself today? How can you change your behavioral patterns so you have less impact on the environment, use less resources, use less energy, and so you can put solar panels in, drive electric cars, and maybe you can't afford those things, and so, but there's something that you can do, and do that. And then that will help you change yourself, change your community, and change maybe your region and maybe your country. If enough people together, and this is going to require an upswell from the ground level up to change the society that you live in. So these are the things that we're up against, but I still have hope. I still have hope that we can. And I don't have just a faith that technology will save us, but technology is one of the things that we can use to counter this global change that has, as David said, and this is the thing to remember, that we're all in this together. The climate change affects weather systems, of course it does, but there's no place to run. There's no place to hide. This is going to affect everybody. We're all in this together. We all need to pull our oars in the same direction if we want to move the boat. Thanks again, Sharif, for this time.
Thank you. Professor David Smith, one of the major challenges after this COP26, especially from the developing nations government, we are observing they said yes, developed nations actually committed for a lot of support and investment for climate change projects. It's around $100 billion, but problem is that they have a very critical policy, and managing this policy and public private partnerships is very difficult for developing nations government. What do you think? Second things I want to share this good news actually. December 1 to December 3 we have exclusive event with Rwanda government, uh, 12 ministry of Rwanda government, as well as 15 like different ambassadors and the corporation and university. They will be our audience, and definitely we will start to help the Rwanda government officials as well as corporate person how they can be a better policymakers, how they can develop better courses for their for their people, for their government employee. So how you want to guide Professor David Smith, because you are also part of our board of advisory.
You're right. There is a lot of places where guidance needs to come out from actually everyone within the environment to make this successful. I do think it's interesting, though, with one of the things James said is if you begin to go back and look at the polluters in the order from the largest to going down, and the top 10 is actually an interesting list. China is actually the largest polluter in the world. And if you look at it, they emit about 10,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide per year, for example. The United States is the second, though, but they emit about 5 million tons of CO2 every year. So you see it's 100% more in China. But then you begin to go down from there. The third largest polluter is India, then Russia, then Japan, Germany, then Iran, and Saudi Arabia, which those two are there a lot because of both the oil production, but actually the sand and the elements of what you see in those environments actually do contribute to climate change and global warming. Then you have South Korea and Canada to kind of round out the top 10. So you can kind of see just with that example, we're going all the way around the world. But in the top 10 list, there is a concentration and the Pacific Rim and the Asia environment there, where there's a lot of pollution, particularly CO2 emission, that is affecting climate change out of that region. So, Sharif, you're 100% right. The region needs to come together and work collaboratively across them. You need to see not just a regulatory environment for one nation there, you need to see it for the others. And I agree with Jane. Science is going to help a lot, but the problem with science is you have to do it on a grand scale, because climate change, in my vernacular as a futurist, is a grand challenge. And grand challenges have to be treated as a thing, because it's not a single point solution. It's not a simple solution path. It wouldn't be a grand challenge if it was easy to do. Fixing climate change is going to be hard to do. But if I go back and look at the past history on this, there's been places where we've had other places where climate change. For example, when a large meteorite has hit the world, and you see that as an example. You see times in the past with massive volcanic action and things which have impacted climate change. And we begin to stabilize and come out of those. I'm fairly confident that with the science and the fact that we can now act on a global basis, that this is an area that, with the type of cooperation and regulatory actions that you were talking about, Sharif, that we can begin to make a significant impact. Not that we just can, we must make a significant impact.
Thank you. Thank you. We have our expert climate change activist, and I think that he is a very successful entrepreneur in this industry, Mr. Marshall. So we are discussing about global climate change, and beside that, we are discussing how actually the commitment what we get in COP26 from developed nations, uh, like how this kind of commitment will be helpful for the global community, especially developing different kind of projects in developing nations. So how you want to share your experience, and I know that you have some good news from your corporations you can share with our audience.
Yeah, thank you. Apologize for being late, but I've been having technology problems. Nobody has those right anymore. Everybody's just me, right? Anyway, so the good news we have is we received our first pre-issuance credit enhancement guarantee for a EU climate bond. We have 7 joint ventures around the world, and we're doing more to convert waste into resources. And it's a triple bottom line approach to address climate issues. It's the very topic we're talking about. So some of the things that we're addressing, and specifically for our group, is improving soil health, improving water quality, both at wastewater treatment plants, sewage plants, but also water bodies that have what are called harmful algal blooms, which have neurotoxins in them and can be very harmful to humans and animals and fish. And we also have the technology to lower greenhouse gas emissions of all kinds. I think everybody knows in one of the past sessions, I kind of spoke about the issue of the canary in the coal mine, which is the Thwaites Glacier, in which when I got back from Europe back in 2020, on January 20th, 2020, I was with a bunch of climate scientists who were studying ice melt in all the glaciers around the world. This one group was studying the Thwaites Glacier, and they showed me a picture of December 20th, 2019 versus January 20th, 2020. And the contrast was stark. I'm not a scientist, so I am quantitative in nature, but I'm not a scientist. So I asked, what's the difference in what I'm looking at? What they were showing was a concentration of methane coming off the Thwaites Glacier 100x in 30 days, and it's continuing to grow. And that's the canary in the coal mine. As the Thwaites Glacier and the glaciers behind it begin to melt, it adds water to the planet, It's not like the North Pole. The North Pole is ice and water, so the displacement is great, but obviously the displacement is going to be huge. There's a climate clock in Union Square, not the one in Times Square for New Year's that's coming up, but the climate clock in Union Square, 14th Street, is showing a reduction in not a reduction, but an increase in climate price process, what's going on around the world, and this actually the counting down of what's happening with the Thwaites Glacier. It's not good news. We'll probably have about 200 million climate migrants around the world as parts of the world go underwater. It's not a joke, but it's my statement that I think that people who work on Wall Street will probably have to be like Venice. They'll have to take a gondola to get to work. So the issue here is that climate crisis is real. The issue of COP26 is, to me, it's an interesting event. A lot of people were upset and displaced by what happened in COP26, and so what we're seeing is an event that I think somebody said that if you took all the lobbyists from the coal and fuel companies together, they would make the third largest country in the world. A lot of that money was spread around to change the decisions in India. Didn't take much to change the Russians, but also the Chinese and some other players. I know that the Dutch and others tried to valiantly convince people to stay on a low carbon footprint and make it real. In other words, have some consequences if they don't. Right now, it's all voluntary. But as that may be the case, we are not ceding the ground to these folks. We are going to continue to work and actually make a case to the fuel and coal companies that we have an opportunity for them to transition their workers, their profits, and their ability to a sustainable capability. It is possible. We know because we're doing it, and we can take their resources and make them more money for their shareholders if they want. But people are hard to change attitudes because it has to do with what we call adoption of innovation. People don't adopt right away. If that were the case, then everything would be different in this world. We wouldn't have the climate crisis. But the climate crisis is fought against by people who are either skeptical, don't believe it, or don't believe it and know better. So it is what it is. So we're taking the fight not to them, we're taking the fight to the people who can make a change and make a difference, like ourselves and like everyone on this forum. Everyone here has to pull together. We need all hands on deck, and we need to go out there and do whatever anyone can do. We're continuing to go after. I just spoke yesterday with some folks in Thailand and Vietnam who want us to get another bond like the kind we're getting now. These bonds are important because the climate bond is in what's called the green bond format. And what's interesting about the green bond format is that it's confusing. There is a green bond. Climate bonds are considered green bonds. There are ESG bonds. There are social responsibility bonds. They're all considered the green bond format. But the climate bonds are unique in that they're the only ones rated by Fitch and Morningstar. And the reason they're rated and the others are not is because the taxonomies are stringent. The Climate Bond Initiative, which are the regulators in Europe for the climate bond, have been doing this since 2009. They're all oversubscribed and they're all highly rated. And the reason they're rated again is because there's no greenwashing. That's being prevented. So as I can tell you right now, this is one way to get funding to the table. One of the mechanisms that we also are doing is this pre-issuance credit enhancement guarantee, which is a new mechanism created in March of 2020 by the regulators in Europe to allow companies such as ours that have technology, that have manufacturing capacity, but we're not set up as for profit. Well, we were set for profit, but we were set up as IPCOs, an IP company, but turned into an operating company. So through the joint ventures, we have players who are brownfields that are going to be converted to greenfields 100%. This all goes towards addressing the climate crisis as we see it today. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall, for your excellent analysis. And definitely, this concept and this kind of initiative will be very, very helpful, especially for developing climate related projects. And it will solve many problems. And I believe that if you are interested, because this December 1 to December 3, we have very exclusive event with Rwanda government. There are 12 ministries, 15 ambassadors, as well as different university and corporation they will join. We want to invite you all in our event. And why we are developing this kind of public-private partnership initiative? Because we need to educate people. We need to develop human resources, those who can manage this kind of policy, those who can engage with this kind of business. Still, I believe how to create bond and how to develop this kind of bond, and from the bond, how they get more benefit. Still, it's unknown for many corporation I know and many organization I know. So this is very good opportunity, I believe. Mr. Ching, I have a different questions to you because uh, uh, when we see this COP26, finally we see that China and USA, they committed that they will work together and they will solve this climate related problem. So what do you think? What will be futures of this USA and China relationship?
Yeah, let me say this. Okay, first. Okay, first thing first. My interest is only in knowledge, not money or politics. Okay. Also, just to answer your question, not to avoid, China and the U.S. You see, the Chinese I understand very well. The American I understand very well. Okay, their problem is not you see, the climate change unite them together. Okay, that's a good thing. But I think the Chinese will not change much.
Okay.
My opinion, Chinese will not change. The U.S. will change, but U.S. is already very clean. Okay, so basically, the problem with Chinese and the American is not this climate change is not the big issue. Okay, that's my conclusion. It's not a big issue. Okay, both sides use it to do something else. Okay, so that's my answer to you. Okay, very direct answer, which is a negative answer. Okay, not a favorable, talk. So to come back to the environmental issue, the environmental crisis. Okay, the first question to ask is global warming beneficial or harmful? Okay, to the establishment, the answer is obviously it's harmful. Okay, any change is harmful, not just environmental change. Okay, but I still think this is not, it's just an opinion. Okay, it's not. I look at the Nobel Prize winners and all this latest talk on environment issue. I think, you see, nobody really truly answer this question of what is the value of climate change. Okay, I wrote to one of the Nobel Prize winner, the guy who got the most money. Okay, Gio Parisi, and he has no answer. Okay, basically, and also the Japanese who got the Manabe, he's actually going out to say this, to view the same thing as I view. He said we make the climate more understandable. That's all. Okay, so basically this question is not answered. Okay, from point of view, my point of view as the founder of pole science, I say there's lots of problems. Okay, first there's you got to decide the value of climate change. If you don't have a way to decide value of climate change, then how do people know if it's good or bad? Obvious for the Chinese, it's bad. It's bad for their lung, but it's good for their manufacturing facility. Okay, so you got to balance this too. Okay, for the for the world, there's rising in sea level, which is it good or is it bad? Okay, so all this need to be balanced, good and bad. Okay, therefore, it need the discovery of a pole science, which is the infinite spreadsheet to determine the value. You got to know the value before you can go make a decision. Okay, all rational decisions should be made based on value. Okay, this is outside of science. Okay, science doesn't have this. And the pole science suggests this, but very few people can understand this. Okay, for example, Milton Friedman is against, this alarming in environmental crisis. And Milton Friedman, I know, he's very honest. Okay, so I'm not on Milton Friedman's side, but I'm on the side of knowledge. I want people to, that's the letter I wrote to this Nobel Prize winner. Ask him, can you tell me how you determine the benefit or the harm of global warming? Okay, he couldn't answer. Second point is fuzzy logic. Okay, nobody, of our audience here, they probably don't even think this is a involved question. But this is the central question. Okay, the central question. For example, you got to have range of tolerance for the climate. Okay, it has to, your simple question: what is the range of tolerance of temperature for human to survive on Earth? Okay, you have to have a range of certain things. How much, toxic material can Earth absorb? How hot, how much sunlight? All this are range of tolerance. Today's science, they only talk of precision. They want to determine exact things. Okay, this is survival. It has a range. And within this, until you know the range, then you can determine the value. Okay, it's get to one side or get to the other of this tolerance. We have to watch out. Okay, we don't have values, it's infinite spread. We don't have fuzzy logic. And one of the guy who can have the Nobel Prize studied complexity theory. Okay, good. We are for that. But pole science has solved the problem of complete automated software. We are the people who solve the foundation of complexity theory. Okay, first you got to make things complete automate. Then this complete automated system will be able to analyze the complexity of human life, the complexity of the Earth. Okay, here come to the final question, final problem, the fourth point. That is self-creation. Okay, scientists, they believe Earth comes from random chance. Okay, what we need to do is we need to, think. Even if we do not believe in intelligent design, but we need to think in terms of intelligent design. How do you design a living system which can tolerate human being living on this environment? Okay, you need to go to human must have the knowledge to control the environment of the living system. Now we have nothing. Okay, we don't know anything. You see. So this is the thinking in terms of design, in terms of random chance. This make a big difference. We got to know how to design. Let's not argue about intelligent design debate. Okay, but just for this environment situation, we need to know how to control the environment. When it changes, I don't know what is the benefit or harm of this change. Okay, these are not done. Also, all this talk in Nobel Prize. Okay, my friend who founded the post-normal science, which is sort of, another post-science institute, but they only study the environment. They just get to the point. They just study the environment. Okay, so this post-normal science is where they get all the obvious. Therefore, for against the global warming. Okay, so I would say that there is we have questions about this. I'm sure post-normal science have questions about this, and we're not on one side or the other. We're neutral. Okay, we think people should pay more attention to knowledge and push this forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jamsid.
Thank you, Sharif. Wonderful discussion. I wanted to go back to something that Marshall was saying, is that the sea rise is definitely one of the effects of the climate crisis that we're facing. And if ice melts into water, there's a displacement. But if ice melts over land, as in Greenland, for example, the ice melting in Greenland is very significant now. And that's just an add. That's not a displacement. It's worse than displacement. It's an add to the sea levels. And so the sea level rising is something that is measurable, as David suggested, and getting more and more severe. Something that we have to pay attention to, because it's, the marine biological systems are really good at taking carbon out of the atmosphere. And so when they are destroyed either by man building ports or other things, or they're destroyed by rising sea levels, this is a loss. This is a loss that's irreplaceable. And I liked what Hugh Cheng was just talking about knowledge base, and what if I could put it into my own words, is we don't have the metrics yet, and we have to agree on what the metrics are for whether deciding something is good or bad, something is positive or negative. And, we've got a long way to go just to develop those metrics. And then can we feed them into, say, with the quantum computers of today, can we feed them into them and actually come out with some sort of intelligent design for such complicated ecosystems that we're talking about? And, we have to avoid the garbage in, garbage out. If we feed it bad metrics, we're going to get bad solutions as the answer. So this intelligent design concept is far more complicated than I think the first reaction would normally be. Yeah, we can solve this by plugging in computers to and give them the data, and that's actually not how it works. You have to plug in intelligent data into the computer and have them programmed to spit out intelligent solutions. So these are things that are in the future. We have not yet gotten there. We haven't even developed the basic metrics to decide what is tolerable. I might say, well, a rise of 1 degree centigrade is tolerable, and you might say 2 degrees is, and you might say 2.5 degrees is, and another might say 3. And we haven't come to any sort of agreement on these things. But what we do know is that there comes a point of no return, where we get to a point where we no longer can tolerate it. We no longer survive. And when David was talking about asteroids and volcanic eruptions changing the atmosphere in the past, these were climate changes, of course, but these were also extinction level events. And so what we're talking about is extinction level event looking us right in the eyes. And what are we going to do about it? So we have to collaborate and cooperate if we're going to develop solutions, and even agree on the metrics that we need to agree on before we can come to decide this is a good solution, this is not a good solution, this is a tolerable solution, this is intolerable. We haven't even gotten that far. That's why this critical crisis that we face, this crisis that is extinction level by nature, we are just scratching the surface at the answers right now. Do we have the capacity to get these answers? Yes. Do we have the capacity to build the technology to solve these problems? Yes. Do we have the will? I'm not so sure. So this is what my contribution to this panel of experts is we need the will, the leadership, as well as the data and the science behind it. We need everything. This is everybody's in this together. You know, used to be weather systems like the pea soup London fog affected because the factories were pumping toxins into the air. People couldn't breathe it. So what did the rich do? They moved away. Today, where did the rich go? There's nowhere to go. It's a global event. So we're all in this together. We all have to be pulling our oars in the same direction. Thanks again, Sharif. Wonderful topic.
Thank you. Mr. Markley.
There we go. Yes, a very powerful topic. Definitely one that I can agree with a lot of the things that Jim Mead was talking about. Climate change is definitely something that we need to be concerned about. And of course, we did see it become an issue that has become very prevalent and more people are talking about it these days. But one of the things that Jim alluded to, and which I've always times been concerned about, it happens here in the United States, but it happens here in other parts of the world as well, is what is called economic justice, because a lot of times, as Jim was just alluding to, a lot of times if we build power plants, or if we have dumps, or we have things like that, it is oftentimes in poor neighborhoods that are also oftentimes minority communities. I know that that's happened in the parts of California where Jim is located at, and it's definitely been an issue that we saw even before the pandemic in Detroit, when we saw what happened in the water and all of that. So that has been a major issue. I actually grew up in the small town of Warrenton, North Carolina, and a lot of people don't know that, but that was one of the fathers of what is called economic justice and things around that nature, because there was a major chemical dump that was going on at that time, and they actually went through a lot of rural areas. And like I said, a lot of those were minorities. So Ben Chavis and others got involved in that, and that's when they kind of coined some of those terms around economic justice and climate justice and things around that term. So it is definitely an issue that is very pertinent to the African American community. I know even here in Durham, our one of our city council candidates has brought that up as an issue, and some people sometimes give her a hard time because they're like, why be concerned about climate change when we need to be concerned about gentrification and concerned around streets and public transportation and a number of other things. But at the end of the day, the climate, without a good climate, none of us will be around. I remember that on one of my shows on another platform, one of the guests was actually saying that he feared that we may not be here in 10 or 15 years because of some of the things that we are doing to our own climate. And, as one in his late 50s, hoping to make it to 100 or maybe even 200, even though Jim tells me that that's next to impossible, I'm still going for that and everything and trying to set that goal, even though, like you said, it's probably not going to happen. Only a few biblical characters, if you want to believe in those things, did it happen to in their life. But I know that even if I go for the average lifespan, whether that's the 70s or the 80s or something like that, I hope that the world is still around for my nephews who are 12 and 13. And right now, don't want them to think that they're going to be gone from here before they even get into their 30s and 40s and be like my age as well. So I do think that it is a concern that we need to be addressing on a regular basis, because like I said, if we don't, then we do run the risk of perishing. And like I said, I think it's something that we need to be concerned about and trying to figure out ways to improve. As a last note, and I know Jim may be aware of this person as well, I was a big fan of different types of activists, whether that was the Black Panthers, whether that was the Weather Underground, or a number of others. And there was a gentleman that was called the Fox, and he actually wrote a book called Ecotage. And it was actually where he would go and bring a lot of the corporate mess to the corporations and bring it right to their doorsteps. I remember one case, I think it was in the Midwest, where he grabbed some fish that had been killed by the toxic waste and that sludge, grabbed the fish and snuck into that corporate office and dumped it on their desk to let them know exactly what they were doing. And maybe we need some more radical actions like that as well around the world. Don't know that I would be encouraging people to do things in that kind of radical way, but sometimes you have to slap people in the face in order to get their attention. So that's just one of the things that I just wanted to bring in. And like I said, in some ways, he is a hero of mine, because I think that he did some amazing things. Unfortunately, he has gone from this world and everything, but there are other people that are even doing that right now. Of course, I'm a big fan of Greta, who is definitely the young lady over there in Europe, and she's even said some of the same things that I've said, which is that, She's tired of the politicians just talking the talk. She wants to see them actually walk the walk and do the action. So don't just talk like you're going to be making some changes, but actually do things that will bring the change about, and don't get caught up in the whole gridlock of corporate madness between, say, the Republicans and the Democrats, or the liberals and the conservatives, if you're in other parts of the world. But definitely just go and realize that together we need to work together in order to solve these problems. And whatever your differences may be on either the religious front, orientation front, whatever the differences that we may have, if we do not work together, there'll be no world for us. So we need to work together to make sure that we have a world to pass on to our next generations. And that would be my last thoughts and some of the comments that I would make.
Thank you, Mr. Markley. This is an excellent discussion, and I'm sure our audience will get a lot of guidelines from our speakers. Thank you for joining today's sessions. Before I go for the concluding remarks, I just request that World Talent Economy Forum, we are collaborating with many government, corporation, and academy. We just finished our work with Malaysian Climate Change Department. Then we start with Rwanda. January, we have very special episode with all of the Muslim countries. You know that 57 countries in Asia and Africa, they are Muslims. So we are collaborating with them. So yes, we need good scholars, we need corporations, we need academic persons, we need good politicians for development, for collaborations. So your support, especially how I getting support from World Talent Economy Forum speaker, this will be really helpful. So from January, from December, we want to start in Rwanda. Also, we will provide training, especially we provide training to 600 entrepreneurs in Rwanda. So the speaker, those who are interested to work with World Talent Economy Forum, you can share your CV. So we will because we are planning for some very good initiative. And beside that, I'm sure our open dialogue already it become very popular to many government, especially they believe that World Talent Economy Forum dialogue is helpful for the national development. Thank you for joining today's session. I directly want to go for the concluding remarks. First, I want to start from Professor David Smith. What's your concluding remarks?
Sharif, thank you again for letting me be part of this. And I agree, the panelists you've had on today have put some great solutions and concerns and activities on the table. I have to go back to something which I'm so glad James has embraced this as well too. Climate change really is a systems to systems challenge. You can't just change one area and it will fix the problem. You can't change it in one location and it will fix the problem. It's the interaction of all of these elements that are necessary to take place for us to be successful. It's not something that a government or a group of governments can do by themselves. They're an important piece of it. Industry is an important piece of it. Academia is an important piece of it. And the consumers are an important piece of it. The impacts, particularly some of the weather change, which is affecting the rest of the ecosystem, we really need to understand much more rapidly than we are right now. And it's an area where we should put a lot of emphasis now, is understanding the climate change and its impacts on health, its impacts on agricultural production, its impacts on really the ways of life as we see it, and casualty loss and other things around that. But the bottom line is it's a systems to systems problem, and we have to act on a global basis to be able to solve it. So Sharif, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Jamsit, what's your concluding remarks?
Yes, thank you, Sharif. Wonderful opportunity. Great panel. As always, you do a great job assembling people and tackling tough issues. And this is a tough issue. This is a potentially catastrophic issue that we're talking about. And it is global in nature, as David has taught me to say, a system of systems. And I do believe that we can, if we pull together and take action and do it rapidly, that we can do this. But it means pulling us in, all working together. And, we're not necessarily good at that. David and I had the same top 10 list, and a little bit different, but basically China and the United States are the top two, and together more than half. India is probably the leader of the rest. But who's doing who could do the most benefit by changing the most? So this requires cooperation between countries that aren't really poised right now to cooperate. But the final point that I would like to make in my concluding remarks is stop building walls. There's enough walls between us, separating us. What we want to do is tear down the walls and build bridges so that we can get to each other, talk to each other, work with each other. This is what we need to do. Build bridges, not walls. And don't throw up your hands and say this is too big a problem, because then you're just another brick in the wall. We don't need this. Think of what you can do for yourself, by yourself. Think of what you can do in your community, for your community. Ask not what the earth can do for you, but what can you do for the earth? These are the questions that we must be asking ourselves today. So thanks very much again for a wonderful show and the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Mr. Ching, what's your concluding remarks? Can you unmute, please, Mr. Ching? I think there is some technical
Can you
issue, Mr.
unmute?
Marshall. Mr. Marshall, what's your concluding remarks?
Okay, I can do it now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I can do it now. Okay. Well, first I would like to thank James for illuminating my first 2 points. Okay, which is quite good. People probably understand the double, so that's very good, especially on fuzzy logic. Okay, my mentor, actually, the person who I work most closely is Rafi Sadeh, father of fuzzy logic. He has been criticized by the public for 60 years. Okay, now I'm proposing that fuzzy logic instead exact logic should be the foundation of knowledge, because it gives finite range of tolerance versus zero range of tolerance. Okay, so this is probably a winning, situation for fuzzy logic. So this fuzzy logic is something everybody should start to pay attention, because it's a new foundation for knowledge. Okay, and also James and David all talk about the extinction. Okay, that is the topic I am sort of interested. I would like to see David and James 10 points priority. I have 4 points, but all for myself, okay, not for others. Okay. If you send me, I'm on Facebook. My Facebook is a Hugh Ching Jiang Post. If you join me, Hugh Ching Jiang Post, Facebook, and I express most of my views on Facebook because it allows more freedom to express. Okay, so if you people like to do it on the extinction, this is a survival crisis. Okay, there is still a question whether the human race can survive. Okay, it looks like there are ancient civilizations which are extinct. Okay, but they never, I checked them, and they never reached the point of science. Okay, this time the human race has reached point of science, scientific contribution. But can they reach further? That is a question. Okay, so if we cannot solve the environmental problem, we do not deserve to inherit the earth. Okay, basically. Okay, so this is the question whether we can. I have found 10 people who are leading thinkers, include, I say, the Rafi Sadeh and also Milton Friedman, also Kenneth Arrow, Gerald de Brue. These people are the technical value theory, the solution of value. Okay, I solved the problem they posed. So basically, there is this survival question. I'm glad that you mentioned it a couple of times. I'm just putting some emphasis on that. There's many problems we need to solve before we can inherit the earth. That's my conclusion.
Thank you, Mr. Ching. Mr. Marshall, what's your concluding remarks today?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, Sharif, and thank you for having me on this esteemed panel. Everybody here has presented some very powerful thoughts and ideas for action as well. And that's where we're focused. Because the topic is the global climate crisis, I thought I'd bring to everyone's attention, especially the viewers out there that may not be aware of it, that I would recommend two books. I have no financial interest in these books, but I do have connections with these people as thinkers, thought leaders. The first book I want to show you is a book called The Uninhabitable Earth, by Life After Warming by David Wallace Wells. It's a very powerful book. This is the book that I gave to one of my colleagues, Kathleen Draper of the International Biochar Initiative. She is the executive director. She's the chairwoman of it. And she was at COP26 representing the biochar industry, which is a industry that can sequester carbon in major ways. And I showed her this book, and she read the first chapter, and it scared the living daylights out of her. But I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to give you hope as well. So, but you need to understand the issues. And I think our panel here has addressed the issues. But if you want it in writing from a scientific method approach, read David Wallace Wells, The Uninhabitable Earth, Life After Warming. The other book that I recommend is by a very well-known climate scientist based in Texas. It's a young woman by the name of Catherine Hayhoe. Dr. Hayhoe wrote a book called Saving Us, A Climate Scientist's Case for Hope and Healing in a Divided World, which I think goes right to the point of what we're talking about. That's this book here. And I would recommend that you read this. This is a very powerful book. And it does bridge the science along together with how do you address the political divided world and what can we do to make a difference, each and every one of us. My own personal point of view, let alone what we're doing physically to actually change the climate issues or address them, is that the climate crisis is a problem with having to do with, as Hugh and James and David and Mark have all, it's a lot of integrated issues, everything from climate justice to science to politics to everything that's human and political economics as well. So my point of view is that what we need to address is a point of view of addressing the people who are willing to listen and make a change. They don't have to agree with us. They don't have to agree with me, but they are willing to listen and hear another point of view. There are people out there that are not willing to hear the other point of view, and those are not the people that I'm trying to convince or to address. My approach is to take action, join people who are taking action, such as ourselves, to change the climate, address greenhouse gas emissions, address soil health, address livestock health, which, by the way, is a basis for zoonotic diseases, and also address water. Those are the fundamentals. Everything else, if we address those, we can actually make a difference. And whether we change it to 1.5 degrees centigrade or 2, or whatever the degrees of centigrade that are tolerable or intolerable, we just need to take the action and move on it now. And peace to everybody, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Thank you, Mr. Marshall, for your excellent closing remarks and analysis. Mr. Markley, what's your concluding remarks? Mr. Markley, we cannot hear you. Mr. Markley.
Technical problems weren't only Marshall's.
I think there are some
Well,
technical problem.
yeah, I'll just pop in and say what Mark can't say right now, and that there are people that we forget when we think about these technical issues. There are people that are displaced, poor, and do not have the resources to take care of themselves, and we must take care of them for them. So they must be included in all of our data gathering, even when they don't have their own voice to speak for themselves. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. This is an excellent discussion. I just want to share our December 1 to December 3 like topic, especially for open dialogue. Topic 1, December 1, we will discuss on COVID-19 and public-private partnership contracts. December 2, we will discuss on tech, trade, and investment in Africa beyond COVID-19 challenge. Uh, and number 3, ICT for women entrepreneurs in innovation and job creations. Beside these dialogues, we will train 600 entrepreneurs in Africa, in Rwanda, as well as we will do policy research. Our World Talent Economy Forums develop policy for Rwanda and with the help of Colat Lab. And we already, I just want to share some of the audience because our local partner, they already start to invite ambassadors of Rwanda in Netherlands, ambassador in Rwanda in Poland. They will be our audience as well as speakers, ambassador of Rwanda in USA, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Trade and Industry, Secretary of Ministry of Youth and Culture, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Defense, Rwanda National Police, Minister of Local Government, Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources, Minister of Infrastructure, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Speaker of Chamber of Deputies of the Parliament in Rwanda, Prime Minister Office, Economic and Commercial Office, U.S. Embassy in Rwanda, U.S. Department of State, Deputy Head of Development, German Embassy, French Embassy, uh, Nigeria Embassy, First Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Project WBS, German Meritina, German, I think they have a very good business and collaborations in Rwanda. They will join Chief Officer of Foreign Trade Emotions, Ministry of Economic Affairs, Transport, Agriculture, uh, Rwanda Development Board, Private Sector Federation, Harvard University officials, University of Rwanda, Mount Kenya University, Africa, resident representative executive directors, Rwanda Development Bank. And beside that, from our side, we want to invite 18 speakers. So I just want to ensure those who join in World Talent Economy Forum, it's not only open dialogue you are contributing, it's more on national contributions. Not only this Malaysia, Rwanda, I can ensure more than 50 countries, their government, their corporation, their academy, they are collaborating, they are supporting, and they are engaging with World Talent Economy Forum, and they believe with policy research, with open dialogue, and with different kind of strategic alignment can help developing nations in a proper way. So I can ensure that we have a very good dream. We have a very strong team, those who are doing hard works. So with your contribution, we will change this world. That is our commitments. Thank you, Mr. Marshalls, Mr. Ching, Mr. James Eid, Professor David Smith for your excellent contribution for World Talent Economy Forum. And this is not the ending. I want to say this is the beginnings. I'm sure your contribution will change millions of people's life, millions of people's life. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Yeah, Sharon,
Thank you.
where's
Bye-bye.
double hitting?
Peace.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.